James Carter walked through the glass doors of Sterling Tech Solutions, with his head held high and hope in his heart, like he had done every morning for the past 7 years. Today was different though, because today was the day he would finally hear about the promotion he had been waiting for. His wife Sarah had woken up early to pack him an extra special lunch with his favorite turkey sandwich and homemade chocolate chip cookies that she knew would give him courage. His 8-year-old daughter, Maya, had stayed up past her bedtime the night before to draw him a picture of a man in a suit standing on top of a mountain with the words, "My hero Dad," written in purple crayon across the blue sky. James kept that drawing folded carefully in his wallet right next to his family photo, and he touched it every morning for luck before walking into the office building. He had been working at Sterling Tech for 7 long years, climbing the corporate ladder one slow step at a time, and today felt different in his bones. Today felt like his day had finally arrived after years of patient waiting and hard work. But as he walked past his coworkers in their cubicles and saw their faces turn away from his confident smile, and heard their conversation stop mid-sentence, James began to wonder if hope was just another word for heartbreak waiting to happen. The familiar knot of anxiety started forming in his stomach as he noticed the way people avoided his eyes and the way the office felt strangely quiet despite being full of people. The morning sun streamed through the tall office windows, casting long shadows across the carpeted floor as James sat at his perfectly organized desk, reviewing the quarterly reports he had prepared for the 3rd time that week. His work was always flawless, and everyone in the company knew it, from the CEO down to the newest intern. He had started at Sterling Tech as a junior analyst right after graduating from State University, with honors and dreams of climbing the corporate ladder all the way to the executive floor. 7 years later, he was still climbing, but it felt like the ladder kept getting taller and more slippery every time he reached for the next rung. James had watched dozens of younger employees get hired and promoted around him while he stayed in the same position doing the same job, with more and more responsibility piled on top of his regular duties. His direct supervisor, Marcus Williams, always said the same thing when James asked about advancement opportunities during their monthly review meetings. "Be patient, James," Marcus would say with that fake smile that never reached his cold blue eyes and never lasted more than a few seconds. "Your time will come, my friend. Just keep doing what you are doing." But James was starting to wonder if his time would ever really come, or if he would spend his entire career waiting for a tomorrow that never arrived. He looked around the office at his coworkers and wondered why his time seemed to move so much slower than everyone else's time in the same building under the same fluorescent lights. James was known throughout Sterling Tech as the go-to person when things got complicated or difficult, or when deadlines seemed impossible to meet. When the Henderson account worth $3 million almost fell through because of a communication breakdown, James worked 3 straight weekends without pay to save the relationship and keep the client happy. When the new computer software system crashed during the biggest presentation of the year with potential investors watching, James stayed up all night in his office, surviving on coffee and determination to fix every bug and get the system running perfectly by morning. When younger employees fresh out of college needed help understanding complex data analysis or client management, James spent his lunch breaks and after work hours teaching them everything he had learned over his 7 years of experience. He had received 5 consecutive years of outstanding performance reviews with comments like exceptional employee and invaluable team member, and goes above and beyond expectations, written by multiple supervisors. He had brought in more new business than any other analyst in his department and had saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars by catching mistakes and improving processes that others had overlooked. Yet somehow, despite all his achievements and dedication, his time never seemed to come. James watched month after month as his white coworkers got promoted after just 2 or 3 years of employment, while he remained stuck in the same position like a car spinning its wheels in deep mud going nowhere despite all the effort and energy he put into moving forward. The frustration was starting to eat away at his usual optimism and positive attitude that had carried him through college and his early career years. The whispers started on a cold Tuesday morning in February when James arrived at work 15 minutes early, as he always did, to find everyone clustered around the coffee machine in the break room, talking in hushed voices that stopped the moment they saw him approaching. Sarah Jenkins, a co-worker who had always been friendly to James and had worked in the marketing department for 5 years, pulled him aside near the copy machine where they could speak privately. "James," she said with genuine worry creeping into her voice and glancing around to make sure no one was listening, "did you hear about the senior marketing director position that you applied for 2 weeks ago?" James felt his stomach drop like he was on a roller coaster that had just gone over the highest peak. The position had been posted on the company website for exactly 2 weeks, and James had submitted his carefully prepared application, along with his updated resume and 3 letters of recommendation. On the very first day it was announced, he was without question the most qualified candidate by far, with 7 years of experience at the company and a proven track record of success that no one else who might apply could possibly match. "What about it, Sarah?" James asked, even though he was afraid to hear the answer and could already tell by the look on her face that the news was not going to be good. "They gave it to Derek Thompson," Sarah whispered, looking around nervously. "He just started working here 8 months ago, James. 8 months compared to your 7 years. I cannot believe they chose him over you." Derek Thompson was a nice enough guy with a friendly personality and good social skills, but James could not understand, for the life of him, how someone with less than a year of experience at Sterling Tech could be chosen over him for such an important management position. Derek had a business degree from a decent state school, but so did James, and James had graduated with higher grades and more honors. Derek was smart and seemed hardworking during his short time at the company, but James had proven himself over 7 long years of dedication and measurable results that spoke for themselves. Derek was good at presentations and had some creative ideas, but James had successfully managed million-dollar accounts and had never lost a single client in his entire career. The only significant difference that James could see between himself and Derek was the obvious one that everyone could see but no one ever talked about openly. Derek was white with blonde hair and blue eyes, while James was black, and in that painful moment standing by the copy machine, James felt the full weight of that difference pressing down on his chest like a heavy stone. He excused himself from the conversation with Sarah and walked quickly to the men's bathroom, where he locked the door behind him and tried to catch his breath. In the mirror above the sink, he saw a man who worked harder than anyone else in the entire building, and who had given 7 years of his life to a company that somehow decided that was still not enough. James splashed cold water on his face and tried to push down the anger and hurt and disappointment that threatened to overwhelm him completely. He stood there for several minutes, staring at his reflection and wondering what else he could have done differently to earn the respect and advancement he thought he had already earned 10 times over. That evening, after the longest day of his career, James sat at his kitchen table staring blankly at his daughter's 3rd-grade homework while his wife, Sarah, prepared their usual Tuesday night dinner of baked chicken and vegetables. Maya was learning about heroes and role models in school and had been assigned to write a 3-page essay about someone she looked up to and admired. She had chosen her father without any hesitation and had written 3 full pages in her careful 3rd-grade handwriting about how he helped people at work and studied hard in college and worked late nights and weekends and never gave up on his dreams, no matter how difficult things became. James read her innocent words over and over again and felt tears stinging his eyes as he realized how much faith his little girl had in him and how much he did not want to disappoint her. How could he explain to his bright, beautiful daughter that sometimes in the real world, working hard and being good and doing the right thing was not always enough to succeed. How could he tell her that the world might judge her by the color of her skin, before it ever bothered to judge her by her character, or her abilities, or her dreams? How could he prepare her for a reality where being twice as good might still not be good enough? Sarah Carter sat down beside her husband at the kitchen table and took his hand in both of hers the way she had done countless times during their 12 years of marriage. "I know that look on your face," she said softly with love and concern in her voice. "What happened at work today, baby?" James told his wife about Derek's unexpected promotion and watched her face change slowly from confusion to anger to deep sadness as she understood what had really happened. Sarah had been with James since their college days and had watched him pour his heart and soul into his career for 7 years. She had seen him work late nights and weekends while other people went home to their families and their hobbies and their comfortable lives. She had listened to him practice important presentations in front of their bedroom mirror and celebrate small victories at work that never seemed to lead to the bigger opportunities he deserved. She had watched him mentor younger coworkers and fix other people's mistakes and take on extra projects that were not even part of his job description. She had seen him come home exhausted, but still help Maya with her homework and still find energy to be a loving husband and father. "Baby," she said, squeezing his hand tighter and looking directly into his tired eyes, "maybe it is finally time to speak up for yourself. Maybe staying quiet and hoping things will change is not working anymore. Maybe silence is not the answer when the problem is this obvious." James had always believed with all his heart that if he just worked hard enough and proved himself enough times and waited patiently enough, someone in management would eventually notice his value and reward his dedication. But 7 years of being consistently overlooked had taught him that maybe being noticed was not the real problem. Maybe the problem was much deeper and more complicated than he had wanted to admit to himself. The next morning, James walked into Sterling Tech with a completely different feeling in his chest that he had never experienced before in his 7 years at the company. Instead of his usual mixture of hope and anxiety, he felt something stronger and more determined. Instead of waiting passively for his time to come, he decided that he was going to make his time happen through his own actions and his own voice. He had spent 7 long years being the perfect employee who never made waves or asked difficult questions or challenged the way things worked. He had smiled politely when he was passed over for promotions and had congratulated coworkers who got the jobs he knew he deserved more than they did. He had swallowed his disappointment and his frustration and had kept working harder, hoping that eventually someone would notice and reward his efforts. But looking at his daughter's essay that morning before leaving for work, James realized that being a real hero like Maya thought he was meant standing up for what was right, even when it was scary and uncertain. Even when speaking up might cost him everything he had worked so hard to build over 7 years. Real heroes did not stay quiet when they witnessed injustice happening right in front of their eyes. Real heroes found their voices and used them to fight for what was fair and right. James spent his entire lunch break in his car in the parking lot researching company policies on his phone and writing down every single achievement and accomplishment from his 7 years at Sterling Tech. He documented every time he had applied for a promotion or advancement opportunity and every time he had been passed over in favor of someone else. He wrote down the names and qualifications of every person who had been promoted instead of him and compared their experience and performance to his own. The pattern that emerged was crystal clear and absolutely undeniable even to someone who did not want to see it. James had been passed over 11 different times in 7 years while watching 16 different white co-workers advance past him up the corporate ladder. Some of those co-workers had been hired after James, but had been promoted before him. Some had received worse performance reviews, but had been given better opportunities. Some had made costly mistakes that James had personally helped to fix, but they had still moved up in the company while James stayed exactly where he had started. Several had less education and fewer qualifications, but had been chosen for leadership positions that James was told he was not ready for. The numbers and dates and facts told a story that James could no longer ignore or explain away or hope would somehow change on its own. This was not about patience or timing or waiting for the right opportunity. This was about something much more serious and much more unfair. On Friday afternoon, after thinking and planning and preparing for 3 solid days, James sent a carefully worded email requesting an urgent meeting with HR Director Linda Patterson and his department head, Marcus Williams. He kept the email brief and professional, but made it absolutely clear that the meeting was important and necessary and could not be delayed or postponed. Linda Patterson responded within an hour, saying that she could meet with him first thing Monday morning at 10 o'clock in the main conference room. Marcus Williams replied 30 minutes later, saying that he would definitely be there as well, and asking if there was anything specific he should prepare for the meeting. James spent the entire weekend practicing exactly what he would say and trying to calm his nerves and organize all of his documentation into a clear presentation that would be impossible to ignore or dismiss. Sarah helped him put together a professional folder with all of his evidence, arranged in chronological order, and Maya drew him a brand new picture of a superhero flying through the sky with a cape made of rainbow colors. "This is you, Daddy," she said proudly as she handed him the drawing. Flying up high to save the day for everyone, James hoped with all his heart that she was right. He hoped that finally speaking up after 7 years of silence would save something important, even if he was not exactly sure yet what that something would turn out to be. Monday morning arrived gray and rainy, as if the weather itself knew that something serious and life-changing was about to happen. Inside the offices of Sterling Tech Solutions, James wore his best navy blue suit that he usually saved for the most important client meetings and carried a leather folder containing 7 years of carefully documented evidence that he hoped would change everything, not just for himself but for other employees who might be facing the same unfair treatment. As he walked through the familiar hallways toward the conference room, his hands were sweating and his heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears, but his steps remained steady and determined. He thought about his daughter's new superhero drawing folded in his wallet and his wife's encouraging words from that morning, and all the other employees at Sterling Tech who might be struggling with the same feelings of frustration and disappointment that he had carried for so many years. James was not just speaking up for himself anymore, and that realization gave him strength and courage he did not know he possessed. He was speaking up for everyone who had ever been overlooked or undervalued, or passed over because of something they could not change about themselves. He was speaking up for fairness and justice, and the belief that hard work and dedication should be rewarded regardless of what a person looked like. The main conference room felt much bigger than usual, and somehow more intimidating, with just 3 people sitting around the large oval table that was usually crowded with a dozen executives during important meetings. Linda Patterson was a fair-minded woman in her early 50s who had always treated James with respect and courtesy during their few previous interactions over the years. She had a reputation throughout the company for being honest and direct and for genuinely caring about employee welfare and company culture. Marcus Williams looked visibly uncomfortable and kept checking his phone every few minutes as if he wished he could be anywhere else in the world besides that conference room having this particular conversation. James sat across from them with his leather folder positioned carefully in front of him and began to speak in a calm, clear voice that surprised even him with its steadiness and confidence. "Thank you both for taking time out of your busy schedules to meet with me this morning," he said, looking directly at each of them. "I want to discuss my career development here at Sterling Tech and some concerning patterns that I have noticed and documented over the past 7 years of my employment." James opened his folder with steady hands and began to present his case with the same careful attention to detail and thorough preparation that he brought to every important project in his professional life. He started by showing them his 5 consecutive years of outstanding performance reviews, which included comments from multiple supervisors praising his work ethic and his contributions to the company. He showed them detailed documentation of the major projects he had led successfully, including the Henderson account that he had saved from disaster and the software crisis that he had resolved single-handedly. He presented a comprehensive list of all the new clients he had brought to Sterling Tech through his networking and relationship-building skills. He showed them evidence of his role in training and mentoring newer employees and the positive feedback he had received from colleagues at every level of the company. Then he carefully and methodically showed them the complete list of 11 promotion opportunities over 7 years where he had been the most qualified candidate based on experience and performance, but where someone else had been chosen instead. As James presented each piece of evidence with calm professionalism, the conference room grew quieter and more tense with each passing minute. Linda Patterson took careful, detailed notes while Marcus Williams shifted uncomfortably in his chair and seemed to find it increasingly difficult to maintain eye contact with anyone in the room. "I want to be absolutely clear about something important," James continued as he reached the most difficult part of his presentation. "I am not here to make personal accusations against anyone or to create problems or drama in our workplace. I have always enjoyed working at Sterling Tech, and I have tremendous respect for this company and most of the people I work with every day. But I do want to understand why my qualifications and my 7 years of consistently excellent performance have not been sufficient to advance my career here. I love my job and I want to continue growing and contributing to Sterling Tech's success, but I need to know that my hard work and dedication will be evaluated and rewarded fairly based on merit rather than on factors that have nothing to do with my ability to do excellent work." His voice remained steady and professional throughout his presentation, but his hands trembled slightly as he closed the folder and looked directly at both Linda and Marcus. The silence that followed felt like it lasted for hours instead of the few seconds it probably actually was. Linda Patterson looked thoughtfully at Marcus Williams, who finally raised his eyes from his phone to meet James's direct gaze for the first time since the meeting had begun. "James," Marcus said slowly, as if he was choosing each word very carefully, "I have to admit that I never realized how many times over the years you had applied for different promotion opportunities within our department. I guess I just assumed that you were happy and satisfied in your current role, and that you were not actively seeking advancement. I thought you enjoyed being our go-to person for complex projects and client relations." His explanation sounded weak and unconvincing even to himself as he spoke the words. Linda Patterson leaned forward in her chair and spoke in a serious tone that made it clear she was not satisfied with Marcus's response. "James, the first have to say that these are some very concerning patterns you have identified and documented here today. I need to ask Marcus some direct and specific questions about the promotion and advancement process in your department. This appears to be a much more serious issue than a simple miscommunication about career goals. I know this could not have been an easy decision for you to make, but it was absolutely necessary and important. Your willingness to document these problems and present them professionally has opened our eyes to serious issues that we should have recognized and addressed years ago." Marcus Williams had grown very quiet and very pale as he realized that his department and his leadership decisions were about to face serious scrutiny and potential consequences for years of what appeared to be discriminatory practices. Linda Patterson continued speaking as she looked around the room at all the employees who had come forward with their concerns and evidence. "I am going to recommend immediately that we launch a comprehensive and thorough review of our promotion and hiring practices throughout the entire company. We are going to examine every personnel decision made over the past several years to identify patterns and problems. We are also going to need to address these specific situations, starting with James's case, and working through each example that has been brought to our attention today. This is going to require involvement from our senior executives and our legal department to ensure that we handle everything appropriately and make the necessary changes to prevent these problems from continuing. The meeting that was originally scheduled to last 30 minutes stretched into nearly 4 hours as more employees continued to arrive and share their experiences, and more evidence continued to accumulate about widespread problems throughout Sterling Tech. By the time the discussion finally concluded, Linda Patterson had filled a legal pad with notes and action items and had collected folders full of documentation from multiple departments. She looked directly at James and spoke with obvious sincerity and determination. "James, I cannot make you any specific promises about what the final outcomes will be because I need to consult with senior management and follow proper procedures. But I can promise you that this company is going to change starting today, and that your courage in speaking up has been the catalyst for changes that should have happened long ago. We have clearly failed many of our employees over the years, and we have an obligation to make things right and to ensure that these problems never happen again." James felt a complex mixture of relief and anxiety and hope and uncertainty as the meeting finally ended and people began to leave the conference room. He had accomplished what he set out to do by bringing these issues into the open, but now he had to wait and see what would actually happen as a result of his decision to finally speak up after 7 years of silence. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning, James received a phone call at his desk from Linda Patterson asking him to come to her office as soon as he had a few minutes available. He walked through the hallways of Sterling Tech with the same mixture of nervous energy and cautious optimism that he had felt before the big meeting, but this time there was also a stronger sense of hope mixed in with the anxiety. Linda smiled warmly when he entered her office and gestured for him to sit down in the comfortable chair across from her desk. She handed him an official letter from Sterling Tech with the company logo at the top and his name printed clearly below it. "James," she said with obvious satisfaction and pleasure, "after conducting a thorough review of all the evidence presented in our meeting, and after interviewing additional employees and examining personnel records, I am very pleased to offer you the position of Senior Marketing Director, effective immediately. This promotion comes with a significant salary increase of 25% and a formal written apology from Sterling Tech for the way you have been treated over the past 7 years. We should have recognized your value and contributions much sooner than this." James stared at the official letter in his hands, hardly believing what he was reading. After 7 years of disappointment and waiting and hoping for exactly this moment to finally arrive, the words on the paper seemed almost too good to be true, and he had to read them several times before they started to feel real. But Linda Patterson was not finished with the good news she had to share with him. "More importantly, James," she continued with enthusiasm and determination, "your actions and courage in speaking up have led to the creation of a brand new Diversity and Inclusion Committee that will review all hiring and promotion decisions going forward throughout every department in the company. We are also implementing mandatory bias training for all managers and supervisors to help them recognize and address their unconscious prejudices. We are creating formal mentorship programs specifically designed to support and advance employees from underrepresented groups. Marcus Williams has been demoted from his management position and will be required to complete extensive additional training before he can supervise employees again. We have also hired a Chief Diversity Officer who will report directly to our CEO and will be responsible for ensuring that all of our personnel practices are fair and equitable." James felt tears forming in his eyes as he fully realized that his decision to speak up had created changes that would help many other people who came after him and who might face the same challenges he had experienced. His voice was hoarse with emotion as he thanked Linda for everything the company was doing to address these problems. "I never expected that speaking up would lead to changes this significant," he said. "I just wanted to be treated fairly and to have my hard work recognized. But knowing that other employees will benefit from these new policies and procedures makes everything I went through seem worthwhile. I am grateful for this opportunity, and I promise that I will work even harder to justify the trust you are placing in me." Linda smiled and shook his hand firmly. "James, you have already proven your worth to this company many times over during your 7 years here. Now we finally have the chance to show you the respect and recognition you have always deserved." That evening, James walked through his front door carrying a bouquet of flowers for his wife and a brand new superhero cape with a big letter J embroidered on the back for his daughter Maya. She ran to him with pure excitement and joy when she saw the cape and immediately put it on over her school clothes. "Did you save the day, Daddy?" she asked as she spun around to make the cape fly behind her. "Did you use your superpowers to help everyone at work?" James knelt down to her eye level and smiled as he adjusted the cape around her small shoulders. "We saved the day together, Princess," he replied, thinking about all the co-workers who had supported him and spoken up alongside him during that incredible meeting. Sometimes being a real hero means standing up for what is right, even when it is scary and you do not know what will happen. And sometimes when one person is brave enough to speak up and tell the truth, other people find their voices too, and together they can change things that seemed impossible to change. Sarah Carter hugged her husband tightly and whispered in his ear, "I am so incredibly proud of you and everything you accomplished. You really are Maya's hero, and you are my hero too." 6 months later, Sterling Tech had transformed into a completely different company with a culture that valued fairness and diversity and equal opportunity for all employees, regardless of their race or background. The new Diversity and Inclusion Committee had reviewed over 200 personnel cases from the past 5 years and had made corrections to promotion decisions that had been made unfairly or based on discriminatory practices. 3 other employees of color had been promoted to management positions, and the company had established partnerships with universities and organizations that served underrepresented communities to improve their recruitment and hiring practices. James was thriving in his new role as senior marketing director and had already implemented several innovative and successful marketing campaigns that increased company profits by 22% while also improving Sterling Tech's reputation as an inclusive employer. More importantly, he had become a mentor and advocate for other employees who faced discrimination or unfair treatment, and he served on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee to help ensure that the positive changes would continue and expand. James often reflected on that pivotal day when he finally decided to speak up instead of continuing to stay quiet and hope that things would change on their own. It had been simultaneously the scariest and most important decision of his entire career, but it had led to changes and opportunities that he never could have imagined. When he first walked into that conference room with his folder full of documentation, his daughter Maya had moved his superhero drawing to a place of honor on her bedroom wall and often asked him to tell her the detailed story about the day he flew in to save everyone at work from unfairness and discrimination. James would sit on her bed and tell her that real heroes are not people with magical powers or special abilities, but are ordinary people who find the courage to stand up for what is right when it matters most. He would tell her that sometimes one voice speaking up with truth and courage can inspire other voices to join in and create a chorus that is powerful enough to change everything. And he would always tell her that no matter what challenges or obstacles she might face in her life, she should never be afraid to use her voice to fight for justice and fairness and equality, because that is what real heroes do, and that is how positive change happens in the world. Linda turned to Marcus with a look that made him sit up straighter in his chair and suddenly appear much more alert and nervous than he had seemed at the beginning of the meeting. "Marcus, I need you to explain to me in detail how Derek Thompson was selected for the Senior Marketing Director position over James. Based on everything I am seeing and hearing here today, James was clearly and obviously the most qualified candidate for that role. He has 7 years of experience with our company compared to Derek's 8 months. He has consistently excellent performance reviews, while Derek has not even completed his first annual review yet. James has managed major accounts successfully, while Derek has never had that level of responsibility. So I need you to help me understand exactly how this decision was made and who was involved in making it." Marcus stumbled and stammered through an awkward explanation about Derek's fresh perspective and new ideas, and his potential for future growth, but his words sounded increasingly hollow and unconvincing in the face of James's thoroughly documented achievements and qualifications. Linda asked several more pointed questions about the decision-making process, and Marcus's answers became less coherent and less defensible with each response. Then something completely unexpected happened that changed the entire direction of the meeting in ways that James could never have anticipated. Sarah Jenkins knocked softly on the conference room door and asked politely if she could speak with them for just a few minutes about something important. Linda looked surprised, but invited her into the room and offered her a chair at the table. Sarah sat down next to James with a determined expression on her face that he had never seen before in their 5 years of working together. "I apologize for interrupting your meeting," she said, addressing Linda directly, "but I happened to overhear part of your conversation as I was walking past the conference room, and I think there are some things you need to know about how promotion decisions are actually made in our department. I have been working at Sterling Tech for 5 years, and I have watched James get passed over again and again and again while less qualified people get promoted ahead of him. It is not right and it is not fair, and other people throughout the company have noticed the same patterns that James is talking about today." Sarah reached into her briefcase and pulled out her own carefully organized folder containing emails and documents and observations that supported everything James had presented. As if Sarah's appearance had opened some kind of floodgate, more Sterling Tech employees began appearing at the conference room door, asking if they could contribute to the discussion. Tom Rodriguez from the accounting department had brought detailed documentation about budget allocation decisions that seemed to consistently favor projects led by white employees over equally successful projects led by employees of color. Jennifer Kim from the Human Resources Department had compiled comprehensive statistics about promotion rates and salary increases organized by race and gender that revealed clear patterns of disparity throughout multiple departments at Sterling Tech. Michael Chun from the IT Department had examples of how his suggestions and innovations had been ignored for months until white co-workers presented the same ideas and received immediate approval and recognition. Even Derek Thompson appeared at the door, looking deeply embarrassed and uncomfortable about the situation he found himself in through no fault of his own. "I really need to say something important," Derek said quietly as he entered the room and found a place to stand along the wall since all the chairs were now occupied. "I have been feeling terrible about this promotion ever since it was announced because I knew that James was much more qualified for the position than I am. I have only been working here for 8 months and James has been here for 7 years. I felt wrong about accepting the promotion, but I honestly did not know what I should say or do about it. I thought maybe there were things about James's performance or qualifications that I did not know about that explained why I was chosen instead of him. But after listening to this conversation, I realized that there probably were not any legitimate reasons, and that makes me feel even worse about the whole situation." Derek's honesty and willingness to acknowledge the unfairness of his promotion added even more weight to James's case and made Marcus Williams look increasingly uncomfortable as more and more evidence mounted against the way he had been making personnel decisions. One by one, additional Sterling Tech employees shared their own stories and their own evidence of unfair treatment and discriminatory practices that had been happening throughout the company for years. The conference room became crowded with people who had been silently watching injustice happen in their workplace, but had never known how to address it or had been afraid to speak up for fear of retaliation. Some employees shared examples of being passed over for promotions despite superior qualifications. Others described how their ideas and contributions had been ignored or dismissed until white colleagues presented the same suggestions. Several people provided documentation of salary disparities and unequal opportunities for professional development and training. The meeting that had started as a private conversation between James and two managers had transformed into a company-wide discussion about systemic problems that affected multiple departments and numerous employees. Linda Patterson looked completely overwhelmed by the volume and consistency of what she was hearing and seeing from so many different sources. Throughout Sterling Tech, she had filled several pages with detailed notes and had requested copies of documentation from multiple employees. "This is obviously much bigger than one promotion decision or one department," she said, looking around the crowded conference room. "What I am hearing and seeing here today appears to indicate systemic problems with our hiring and promotion practices that require immediate and comprehensive action from senior management. These are not isolated incidents or coincidences. These are patterns that suggest serious issues with how we evaluate and advance our employees." She turned to James with something that looked like genuine respect and appreciation in her eyes. "James, the first want to thank you for having the courage to speak up about these issues today.